Spookybands is a talented underground artist known for his folk, alternative, and hip-hop style influenced music. Spooky is a great artist, and hopefully this video helps you learn a little more about him. Spooky grew up moving around in different parts of the East Coast. He was a very outdoorsy kid doing chores around the house like chopping wood and gardening, amongst other things. Spooky comes from a family of artists in all forms. As a result, his hobbies in early life really revolved around creativity. Spooky's father is a painter, and as a kid, Spooky was doing creative activities such as drawing and sculpting. His family was full of musicians as well, so music was also a big part of his life from an early age. When Spooky was 12 years old, he began playing the stand-up bass in school. This was Spooky's main instrument all the way through his teen years. At first, the school had Spooky playing simple orchestral stuff, but he soon moved into jazz. His love for the stand-up bass really shines through in the music he makes today, and he still likes to incorporate it in his live performances. He said he loves the stand-up bass for its big hollow sound and the instrument being very versatile. In school, Spooky was really involved in music. He took music theory classes, learned standard notation, and learned how to score. He auditioned for advanced music intramurals and got accepted. Spooky even traveled around to try out and play for the state orchestra. Despite his love for the stand-up bass as an instrument, Spooky found himself wanting to play the main melodies in songs he liked, and the bass doesn't typically serve that role in music. He remembers watching a live orchestra play the theme from Pirates of the Caribbean and wanting to play the melody the violins were playing. From there, Spooky would noodle around on the bass until he could find main melody notes for the songs he liked. Spooky began writing his own music around 14 years old, and that stemmed from his poetry. Spooky said he always had a knack for creative writing and converted his poetry about his life into music. He was listening to underground alternative pop at the time, and this was inspiring to him. He pretty much started recording his music right away because in one of his music classes he was learning the basics of Audacity. Although Spooky was recording his music at the time, he didn't release anything until he went off to college. In 2014, Spooky went off to college in Connecticut. He had gotten a scholarship for his creative writing. Early in college, Spooky realized none of the jobs a degree from the school could offer really interested him, and he knew he wanted to pursue music. Spooky and his father put together some money to buy him recording equipment. They purchased a simple mic and a Focusrite interface. The interface came with a free trial of Ableton, and the dog clicked for Spooky. He still uses Ableton to this day. In college, Spooky was just recording music in the closet of his dorm, initially just to show his friends. A big goal of his at the time was to make a song his friends would genuinely enjoy and play when he's not even around. He said he didn't want to waste his friends' time forcing his music upon them. It took him a whole year of making music at school before he reached this goal. At this time, the music he made would best fall into the genre of alternative hip-hop. Spooky did make folk music at the time too, but kept it to himself. He was releasing his music on datpiff.com and YouTube. Spooky had a couple friends at school with musical backgrounds, and they began to collaborate. They were growing as artists together, learning how to produce and write songs better. Spooky and his group of friends also began putting together shows at the time. They would invite other college kids to the shows, specifically knowing the kids would go out to party after, and use the shows as a way for them to start their night. At the shows, Spooky and his friends mainly just played their instrumentals on a speaker and did raw vocals over it. The shows had good turnouts, and Spooky said it was very reassuring. Once Spooky was getting more comfortable making music, he found himself moving in between genres, doing hippie beach-style music with more insightful lyrics. The band Sublime was a big influence to Spooky at the time, and the music reflected this. Spooky said he had been out to LA for the first time when he was 18 and had a musically inclined uncle out there who showed him around a bit. Spooky's uncle was a musician with an 80s rock style and had an interest in the industry side of music. His uncle would hang out with musicians, play shows, and go on tours with bands. LA was a vast contrast to Connecticut, and the visit warmed up Spooky to the idea of moving to LA. After college, Spooky moved to LA in 2018. He said LA was a good place to be because it was easy to find like-minded creatives. He said he already had some connections from visiting, and being around other musicians was a huge support system. Being able to walk into the next room and have people to collaborate with is a huge help with inspiration for Spooky. One of Spooky's friends from college, known as Ryan on the Mix, also moved to LA at the time, and the two got right back to work together. Spooky was set in his old ways when he first moved to LA and started throwing shows again. Spooky would rent small spaces, rent equipment, and invite people he knew. He said knowing the people in the crowd helped him with his stage presence and is one of the reasons why he's such a great performer today. Spooky enjoyed LA but said it wasn't without its flaws. He said he was lonely at first, and friendships in LA can be unstable due to the pressure-filled circumstances of living out there pursuing a career in entertainment. 2 years into living there, the COVID-19 lockdown started, and that made Spooky even more isolated. The COVID-19 situation was actually somewhat of a blessing in disguise for Spooky. He was working during COVID and was able to rise through the ranks, making his living situation in LA more stable. After the COVID situation lightened up, Spooky was extra motivated to get out there and make new connections. He said he felt he wasn't alone in this mindset and felt other artists had the same thought in mind. The song titled Favorite Songs was one of the first songs Spooky noticed really get him some attention. This song was released in the fall of 2021. He said at first while he was in LA he was making melodic hip-hop with braggadocious, larger-than-life lyrics, and Favorite Songs was the first song he brought back more personable lyrics. Favorite Songs was still melodic hip-hop in its sound, but the lyrics were more real to him. He said it was hard for him at first to release Favorite Songs because he was worried about what people in his life would think and the repercussions, but once he put it out, he realized it connected with people. Spooky said he learned to use these more personable lyrics from folk artists like Bob Dylan, Bon Iver, and the Lumineers. From there, Spooky was releasing music similar to Favorite Songs for about a year but couldn't reach the same level of success. It wasn't until he began leaning more into the folk genre he reached that same milestone as Favorite Songs. Spooky leaned more into folk-style music by asking producers to send the guitar loops without the hip-hop drums and use the same personable lyrics. In summer of 2022, Spooky dropped an EP titled Spooky and the Ghost Towns with the song Fever Dreams on it. Spooky was also worried about releasing this because with how simple the instrumentals and mix sounded, he couldn't tell if it was naturally him or if he was just doing this because it was easy. The inner struggle was also present for the DIY aesthetic, videos, and live performances that came with the genre. Eventually, Spooky realized it was just him being genuine and he was never really a hip-hop guy down to his roots. The EP, specifically the song Fever Dreams, was successful and ever since then Spooky has been running with this style. To me, it's personally inspiring to see how throughout his entire life and musical journey the influences finally fell into place for him this way. Currently, Spooky has been working with a record label known as Cleopatra Records. Just recently he started his own live band also. Spooky just dropped an EP titled UFO Mythology and American History that he said feels like a callback to the writing and mood of Spooky and the Ghost Towns. In the future, he hopes to get more instruments and live shows involved and wants to travel more. Spooky's a great artist and I hope you enjoyed his story as much as I did. Well, that's all for this video. Big shout out to Hopeless for the edit, and please subscribe for more mini documentaries on various underground artists.